Hi folks, I don't know if people can hear me, and I don't know if there's anybody there. I'm meant to be broadcasting at the moment from jinx.co.uk. We're going to do a live Q&A and all that sort of thing, and Google has completely shut me out. Google has not played ball at all with setting up to do the live Q&A there for a long, boring, complicated reason that's to do with the domain name and what services are permitted on the domain name when the domain name's attached to the Google account and so on. So the fact that this was actually just meant to be a test actually kind of sums up why we do tests, because yeah, it hasn't really worked effectively. I've never ever tried live streaming before. I've never done it, and this is a good a good show of why, because at the moment things haven't played ball at all. But on the other hand, we've got a couple of people joining. Hello, folks who are joining. That's really nice. You see, this was such a kind of quick and dirty substitute for actually, you know, doing the thing through jinx.co.uk. I haven't had time to actually check whether this works. Can people actually hear me? Or I don't even know if people can comment. I've never even done Facebook Live stuff before, so it was madness, clearly, to decide that I was going to actually do, like, anyway, hi, hello, Gary, you can hear, hooray, people can actually hear me. I was going through all the Google, because Google blocked me. It basically told me that I hadn't allowed myself to stream the thing, and yeah, so I've just spent the last 20 minutes just sort of tearing my hair out and going through Google submenus and whatever, and people can hear me and it's loud and clear. Hello, hello Aaron, hello Bev, hello Faye, hello Maury, hello who else we got, Alex. It's great that there are people who've turned up to look at this, which is of course me streaming me talking too quickly, as I always do, in front of my Gremlins poster. Very nearly took down the Gremlins poster and thought I'll replace it with like a proper poster from one of my movies. And then I just thought, oh no, sorry, I'll just leave the Gremlins poster up and that'll work. Hello, Pete. So cool. I've had a couple of questions through, which I'll get to kind of in a minute. I wanted to briefly explain why I'm doing any kind of live streaming whatsoever. And this has partly been because I spend all my life talking to people. I love talking to people. I love going through stuff about screenwriting, stuff about filmmaking, all of these sorts of things. And I normally do this in small rooms. Sometimes these rooms are attached to colleges and universities. Sometimes these rooms are at film festivals and stuff like that. But I'm always limited by how many people I can reach out to who then turn up in the room. And so from a marketing point of view, that becomes a nightmare, because I sort of thought, all right, well, I've kind of tapped out, you know, a lot of places where I appear locally, and we do Horror on Sea every year, and that's awesome. And this year we've got a few more festivals and stuff coming up. We've got a couple I haven't actually finalised yet, so I probably shouldn't say the names of, but hopefully I'll be appearing at those places. But I'm always limited by how far I can get to, how I can publicise events and stuff like that. And then it almost like, I posted the thing on Facebook a couple of weeks ago that I know some of you guys probably saw, where I was kind of going through and trying to make sense of everything, I do, just trying to make sense of the whole thing. And I thought, well, if I actually get the webinar thing to work, I could effectively, you know, deliver all this sort of stuff where normally people have to sort of either pay a lot or travel a lot and end up in a room with me, that I could do that really kind of cheaply from my point of view and cheaply from other people's point of view, so that I could talk about, you know, whether it's how to, you know, whether it's character development, whether it's story structure, whether it's screenwritery stuff, or whether it's just film-based stuff, or just hanging out and talking about things. But either way, I'd never ever dabbled with web live broadcast, so this is it. So thank you ever so much. Oh, MJ, hello, MJ. It's fantastic that people have found me on this very quick and dirty substitute for doing it through Google Hangouts, which, as I say, it just blocked me out and told me I hadn't allowed myself to do it. Jason, hello, Jason. Fantastic. It's great. You see, and as I say, because I've never done this before, I didn't know what to expect. I've approached this with such naivety, and I just sort of thought, oh, it doesn't matter actually, because nobody will turn up anyhow. But there's people and stuff. And Chris, hello, Chris. Fantastic. It's really, really great to see that we've actually got some bodies in the room, and that's wonderful. I got sent a couple of questions. Hang on, bloody hell, there's people here now. I spent all the time sorting out the tech stuff, and I haven't really looked at questions before. I got the first question that I got today was not actually related to, where are we? Not related to, oh, bugger, I can't find the thing now. Not related to screenwriting, but was about horror in general and about the Halloween reboot that's coming up and stuff like that. I'm optimistic. The simple question was how I feel about Jamie Lee Curtis coming back to the Halloween franchise. I'm optimistic about that. I think that's going to be great. I think that's going to be really good. I liked H2O. I liked Halloween H20. I thought that worked really, really well. For the time, it's dated a little bit now, and then you had that Paul and Seagull afterwards. But so I'm quite excited by that reboot. I had another more film-orientated question, or a more screenwriting-orientated question, which we had a minute ago. Bear with me. Which I think was from Bev. Is Bev in the room yet? Yes, Bev's in the room. Hello, Bev. We had, where are we? I got the first. Oh, and that's weird. I just opened Facebook on my phone and saw myself streaming. And that's just really thrown me now. That's proper Black Mirror stuff. That was a question about actually, Bev, if you're here, would you mind reposting it so I don't have to dig around and mess myself up? Techie. Oh, there's one from Gary. Do you think it's easier or harder for new filmmakers to get their movies seen nowadays? I think that's a brilliant question. Best thing I ever did, and I always say this, and it sounds like I'm just sort of doing a kind of optimism in the face of adversity thing, but I'm absolutely truthful about this. The best thing that ever happened to me was everything being incredibly difficult when I made my first movie. Because when I made my first movie, Trash House, back in 2004, only 16 British horror movies got completed that year, or at least commercially released that year. So we were one of a very, very small number of movies that got finished. And so we then got a wide release, and we were in every blockbuster in the country and all that sort of thing. If it had been easier to make movies, there'd have been more movies out there, and less buggers would have ever watched them. So it was the fact that Trash House was a nightmare. To, we had to get a computer specially built because I wanted a 20 gig hard drive. So we got it all specially built and all that, and it was a technical nightmare. But that meant that once we'd crossed all those hurdles and we'd actually got the movie made, we got it put out by a major distributor, and it was in every blockbuster, which was amazing. Whereas nowadays, as Gary rightly kind of says, the fact that there's more filmmakers means that potentially it's easier to make the thing, and it's so much harder to get any bugger to watch it. So to me, that's kind of the situation. I do think it's harder. There's more platforms to get seen. You can get your movies out onto Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime is actually very user friendly. If there's anybody here who's made stuff and wants to monetize it in a small way, Amazon Prime's quite good with that. And actually, I've made the old movies make more as a trickle of income. It's very slow, but an ongoing trickle of income through Amazon Prime than some of them made when they got released on DVD. However, actually, in terms of getting the attention in such a crowded marketplace, it's harder than it ever was. From my point of view, when we were one of 16 British horror movies coming out in the year, we got perhaps an undue amount of attention for a movie that was shot in a warehouse in Shoebury. But that was great. So we overcame all the hurdles making it, and then the distribution side was much easier. Nowadays, it's much easier to make it, but let's face it, all of us could pull a phone out of our pocket, shoot something for 90 minutes, and kind of go, all right, that's a film. Doesn't necessarily mean that any bugger's ever going to actually want to sit down and dedicate a chunk of their life to watching it. So, so there's much more in the marketplace. It's much tougher to get seen, I guess, although the opportunities to go directly to your audience are much greater. I hope that kind of answers that. We've got, Bev's question was, is it possible to make a low-budget horror movie without using any obvious horror tropes, or does the mainstream horror audience expect some to be in it for them to deem it good? Oh, man, the question of what's good is actually something that's been troubling me for a little while. A lot of the time when, again, if I'm lecturing students, particularly younger people, and you often get this kind of real binary, this is good, this is bad. And I'll sort of pull up something that's had a massive, if you look on Rotten Tomatoes and you get the critic score, the audience score, the ones where there's that huge gap between the two of them, ones like Boondock Saints and Grown Ups 2, if you go, all right, well, the critics, funnily enough, thought that Grown Ups 2 was an appalling movie. But out of the people who went to see it, an awful lot of them really enjoyed it. So if we're looking at it being good, is that because if you've made your target audience happy, or does that mean objectively as a piece of art? And I think those terms kind of get bandied around quite a lot. I think that the mainstream audience, particularly those who haven't necessarily grown up with low budget stuff, independent film and things like that, do have a set of expectations, and they assume that when you go too far outside them, it's because you don't understand what you're doing, rather than that you're not choosing to do that. I think there is a bit of a feeling sometimes where if someone turns on a movie that has been shot for kind of love and enthusiasm and all of these kind of things, and has maybe taken a slightly different sensibility, they won't necessarily, some elements of the mainstream audience won't appreciate that the director wasn't necessarily trying to make Saw 5, they were trying to do something completely different. And some of the movies that I dearly love, some of the ones that are my absolute favourite horrors of the last 10 years, if you look at the vitriol that's directed at some of those online by people who don't feel that the movie didn't deliver for them, and so they kind of think, oh, well, that must be some failure on the part of the movie. I love The Babadook. I think The Babadook's an incredible piece of filmmaking, but it clearly is working outside of what people kind of expect from a mainstream horror movie. I'm a believer that The Babadook works best if you take it, it literally kind of follows its own premise as a metaphor. It's saying, you know, I am a metaphor for grief. And the ending of The Babadook, particularly, if you see the whole thing as a metaphor for grief, the ending is amazing. However, if you view The Babadook entirely literally, you might look at it and go, well, that doesn't actually answer all of my narrative concerns. And so the mainstream audience do kind of get fed up with it. I think including some of those kind of tropes, some of those kind of, hello, Matt. Haven't talked to Matt for ages. Lovely to see you here. I think that including some of those tropes can actually make the mainstream audience feel more at home. So if you're going to kind of go skiing way off the map from what they expect, I think a certain amount of, particularly structurally, I think if there is an element of reassurance that the audience seeks from seeing a familiar structure, that they're watching something and go, okay, now we're moving into the third act. Now if those kind of things, hello, Nick. Fantastic to see you, man. Nick was the production manager on Trash House, which I've just finished talking about. Thanks for the fine work that you did, Nick. You can see him in the special features of Trash House, which is available in a pound world near you. What was I talking about? Yeah. So yeah, if you can put in a certain amount of trope, when it comes down to tropes, I think that yeah, they've bled so far into the audience expectation that there is perhaps a segment of the audience that the further you go away from those expectations, the more confused and alienated they'll feel. And I think sometimes as a screenwriter, as a filmmaker, you kind of have to go, yes, I'm just going to let those guys run off and do their own thing, rather than necessarily pandering to them. But I suppose there is a bit of a balance, and I do think, particularly when it comes to selling scripts, that the more familiar touchstones that you go across as you go through the thing, perhaps the more mainstream acceptance it will have. I don't know. So yeah, I try not to just do stuff people have seen before, but I am aware that particularly if I write spec scripts or something like that, generally a lot of the time the notes that I get back on spec scripts from producers who want to buy them are sort of going, have you thought of doing this? And basically the things that they're often suggesting doing are, if I've tried to take a trope and kind of subvert it and twist it, quite often what they're suggesting is to twist it just back again so it's exactly like it is in every other movie. And at that point you do kind of want to, you know, I did kind of do that on purpose, you know, I did kind of try and stay away from doing the incredibly obvious thing, but there is an amount of pressure to do the obvious thing, I think. Has anybody, hello Abby, has anybody else got any other questions? I can blather about various other stuff. If not, if anyone's got stuff that they kind of want to talk about. We're at a point at the moment where one of my projects that I've been bimbling on about for ages, I've talked about killer apps. Some of you may remember it back in the days when it was evil apps. We kept going backwards and forwards between evil apps and killer apps, and eventually we settled on killer, and now some bloody films turned up on, hello Charlie! Hello, I like greeting everybody on the stream. Sorry if it's distracting. But yeah, we've gone back to we changed it to killer apps because ultimately it's one of those titles where it's got that little bit of resonance, you know what I mean? Because a killer app is a thing, whereas an evil app isn't. So we kind of gravitated that way. But there's some bloody movie turned up on Netflix called Killer App, singular. And so I'm looking at it going, oh, damn it, I think we probably need to change that back. But yeah, we'll see. Anyway, killer apps I've been talking about since 2013. 2013, of my show at Horror on Sea in 2013, I announced it as like my next big project that we're going to do this year. And we're now in 2018 and it still hasn't been shot. But we're very close, hopefully, to moving that one into production in the next. We should get the thumbs up or thumbs down in, where are we now? Very first week of March. That should hopefully we get the thumbs up, thumbs down. So if that goes thumbs up, then Killer Apps will finally come off that back burner where it's been sitting for a while. One of the other projects that I talk about quite a lot is Your Lying Eyes, which you may have heard of. That again keeps coming so tantalizingly close to getting produced. It's got a director attached to it in the States who's a wonderful, wonderful director who I can't unfortunately name yet as it hasn't been announced, but they're connected to it on paper. That keeps going to one of these points where it goes to like third meeting, where it will go to a production company, really good production companies as well, and it will kind of go through the third meeting, and then for whatever reason it will kind of fall off the table. And so Your Lying Eyes, I think I probably described it in interviews as being the best thing I've ever written, and it might be. But every time I do that, I think, Higgins, you've got to learn to stop saying that, because if you're trying to sell other scripts as well, you know what I mean? If I'm trying to sell the script for, like, I've got a script called Puncture Wounds, which is a kind of mad vampire road movie thing. And I'm thinking, if I'm trying to get producers to pick up Puncture Wounds, I don't really want to be out there going, oh yeah, Your Lying Eyes is definitely the best thing I've ever written. Everything else I've written is garbage compared to that, except maybe, you know, anything that people might want to buy. But so I'm really hoping Your Lying Eyes will come together as well. But that's like, it's really close. It's a fingers crossed kind of deal, and hopefully that will be there. Hello's my brother. Hi, Carl. Good to see you, sir. Can all of you guys see everybody else's comments? I guess, is that, or am I the only one that sees everybody else's comments? I have no idea how this works. Dan Mullins, my God, long time. Hello, Dan. Yeah, anyway, so unless people want to specifically ask me stuff, I just run like this. I'm used to standing in front of people for sort of up to 8 hours just talking crap. So I will free associate all the way through. Oh, thanks, Charlie. Everyone can see everybody else's comments, which is good. So if I completely duck any questions, then you'll all be able to see it, and that's okay. Oh, Nick can't see any comments. There's like a comments thing down. I don't know. I presume it's under the live stream. There's like 17 comments on there so far. Can everybody else see the comments? I'm expecting you to nod. My Mac is not going to nod. Anyway, sorry. I've had another question here. Do you think it's essential? Oh, Nick can see it. He's being sarcastic. Thanks, man. Much appreciated. Bev said, do you think it's essential to have an agent in modern times, or can indie screenwriters get by without one? I'm going to be brutally honest here, because that's the point of these sorts of things. I spent a long time worrying about getting an agent, and then I started making my own stuff back in 2004. Then I made my first sale to other production companies. I started doing development work for other production companies. And then I finally got an agent a few years ago. Who was a wonderful, wonderful agent. She was really brilliant, and I'm not knocking that experience, except for the fact that actually, unfortunately, we parted ways due to her leaving the company. It was nothing to do with dissatisfaction or anything. My former agent was great, and she was really cool, but I didn't actually make any sales during the time that I was represented, and I was represented by Blake Friedman as a company. You know, it's a big company, reputable company, but I have made sales outside of having an agent, and during the time I had one, I never actually made any sales. Now, that might not be everybody else's experience, but that was mine. And I don't know what the reasons for that were. You know, it's one of those things. I think for some people, and I've certainly come across recently people where they've got managers who've been able to get them fantastic gigs. That seems to be more, you know, I don't know whether stateside there's slightly more of a culture of managers for screenwriters and filmmakers, and over here we tend to think more in terms of agents. But I don't know. But I certainly know that there's a lot of writers out there who absolutely swear by their agents. And if I found another one who I was happy with and who got me, which not all of them do, but if I found another one that I was happy with who got me, then I would jump back into the pool and I would take another agent. But I haven't been like hammering on every door and looking around for it since I sort of stopped being represented, because I still seem to be able to make the sales. I think one of the things that is possibly different is that without an agent, I make the sales, but I think I'm more likely to bugger up the contracts. I think I don't have a legal mind. It may shock you to know I can talk a mile a minute. I love my movies. I love writing. I love what I do. But if someone puts a contract in front of me, I end up going, I trust this person. This person's not going to rip me off. And then I sign it. And then I go, oh yeah, I sold that for not very much money. Oh, I don't get a back end. Oh, I'm not getting paid anything now. So my feeling is that if I had made a sale while I had an agent, I would have got a better deal out of the sale than I get with my own stupid self actually making the deals. So that's why I kind of, Luke, that's a former student of mine from years back. Hello, Luke. I hope you're doing all right out there, man. So yeah, so I'm very, very agnostic about agents. I had a good experience having an agent, but I didn't actually make any sales. I do make sales without having an agent, but I probably mess up all the paperwork and don't get the best deal I could, I think is my honest answer to that. Yeah, I think that's kind of where that one is. Anybody got any other questions? This was only kind of meant to be a tech test. I'm really enjoying this. I might just do this every week. This is great. And then all you guys can hang around together as well. You can all introduce each other to each other and make connections, and that's a really good and positive and groovy thing. I imagine that there's probably a few people who on the Facebook thing who are looking at the jinx.co.uk and feeling that I've completely failed to get this going. But hopefully I'll put a couple of notes in places and I hope it's all right. There's a message from Bev there that you can probably see. Felt the same when I signed book contracts. An agent would have helped with the legal stuff. Yeah, it's John Glendinning. Hello, sir. Fantastic to see you here. John Glendinning, director of Strippers vs. Werewolves, and lots of other movies. But that's my dealings with John. That's how we. Hi, John. So yeah, Bev's experience with agents much the same as mine. If anyone's had really, really positive experiences with agents that you could comment on it, I think, you know, that would just to sort of show the two sides of it. That would be fantastic. What other bits and bobs did I have? I was gonna talk about the reboot thing because I got asked about the Halloween one. If you can't see John's comment, he just said, "Howdy, boss. Don't tell everyone that." Yeah, fair enough. Sorry about that. That was my bad. Summer Rain. There's a movie that wasn't that other one. I hope everything's going really well now. But yeah, the horror reboot thing. I still try and remain positive about it. I want to like every time we revisit the old franchises, I really want it to work. I go into it all open-eyed and just think, yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. And then I get like the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, where I just sort of sat in slack-jawed horror at what had happened to one of my favourite movies. I didn't go into it going, oh no, it's some sacred text that can't be, you know, redone. I just went into it going, I hope this works out, and it really, really didn't. But I think sometimes we can revisit them in a positive way, and I think we kind of need to revisit them in order to keep the ideas alive, particularly things that have kind of become iconic, like Halloween. I didn't take to the Rob Zombie version of Halloween. I didn't even see the second Rob Zombie Halloween movie, so that's the only one out of all the Halloween movies. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 I never watched, because the first Rob Zombie Halloween, which I know a lot of people liked, and if you liked it, good on you, more power to you. I'm never gonna diss things that make people happy, but it didn't work for me as a fan of the franchise, and I kind of thought this franchise is no longer for me because I didn't like the direction it had kind of gone in. Or it didn't appeal to me. And if it appealed to you, as I say, more power to you. As far as the new one goes, it seems to me that it's keeping the idea alive. It's keeping the icon alive. And so it's bringing back Jamie Lee Curtis, and it's always good to see Jamie Lee Curtis on screen. So I'm in, really, with that one. I think that's cool. Any other questions? I will just ramble. I will just go off piste. Hang on, I did have a couple that I made a note of earlier. I'm so badly ordered. It's so nice to see people. Now I just kind of go, oh, wow, there's actually people here. I kind of put, oh, someone's just left. Don't blame me. I had a number of things that I kind of wanted to mention, as I said, about really what people are looking for in terms of someone like me, what stuff I can kind of throw out there. I don't know what people kind of want out of me. I did a post earlier in the week, I don't know if anyone saw it, that was quite an academic post about screenwriting and about screenwriting method, which was about using solo taxonomy in order to kind of deepen your theme. And it's one of those things where you write something like that and you go, that's a bit academic and dry, but maybe people who are really into screenwriting, who are only looking at my stuff because I talk about screenwriting a lot, I thought maybe people really kind of dig on that. And I put that post out there and I wasn't sure whether that was the kind of thing people found useful or not. Yeah, I can keep doing that. I've been working on a book. It will shock you to know. I've been working on a book called Bloody Screenwriting, Write a Killer Screenplay in 30 Days. And that kind of brings together a lot of the things that I've been talking about, tricks that I've used, methods that I've used, stuff that I've done over the years, and indeed from the masterclasses and stuff like that. I kind of tried to bring it all together into one fun book that's hopefully informative and hopefully kind of sums up a lot of the stuff about screenwriting that I sometimes talk about. So the post that I put up earlier in the week about solo taxonomy was kind of like some of the stuff that's going in the book, but hopefully that's been useful to some people. And yeah, as I say, I'll put out some more stuff along those lines, and if people find it useful and people find it helpful, I will continue to do so. Right, well, I've been on nearly half an hour. That was kind of where I was going to wrap it up. So I will kind of wrap it up, unless if people have got any last minute questions, chuck them out there. I'm really, really grateful to you guys for turning up for my tech test, and the fact that it inadvertently ended up being over on Facebook rather than on Google. I've got to try and sort that Google thing, because, as I say, it blocked me because I was using a domain name with Google, because jinx.co.uk routes through Google for all the mail and stuff like that, and then it blocked me from doing a live stream via Google and via YouTube because of they want to upsell you. They want to upsell you onto a completely different suite that I wasn't going to buy, like in a panic going, oh, I'll do that instead. And I couldn't find a way around it. So I'll wrap up now, and thank you guys ever so much. It's been really, really cool to just talk bollocks for half an hour. And I will see you all soon. So cheerio.